Today we're taking a look at all the changes in patch 13.16 and how they've affected our tier list this week. So let's jump straight into it. Duskblade has been nerfed pretty hard after everyone has been building it on all sorts of different champions, just because it's been that OP. Other assassin items like Axiom Mark, Serpent's Fang, Prowler's Claw and Umbral Glaive have been buffed. The buff champions this patch are Wukong, Ekko, Sylas, Akali, Lucian, Caitlyn, Milio, Lulu, Karma and Brand. The nerf champions are Rek'Sai again, Shaco Support, Shyvana, Tristana and Naafiri. So let's get into it and start off with the top lane. In the S tier we have Camille, Darius, Fiora, Garen, Alawi, Malphite, Maokai, Olaf, Poppy, Quinn and Renekton. With the nerfs to Naafiri this week to her base stats, we've moved her down to the A tier in the top lane. We still think she'll be a strong pick in the right matchups, but more suited to the mid lane now, where she was actually intended. Naafiri is a somewhat strange pick because she feels either super disgustingly broken when she's fed, or a little bit useless in the wrong draft. Either way, this nerf is expected, and should make a difference. Wukong's been completely forgotten about recently, so Riot have buffed him in the top lane, increasing his mana per level and buffing his Q and W's mana cost too. Now these are actually fairly big buffs, meaning he can trade and bully more lanes more often, and in the right matchups he can definitely be a pretty scary lane bully. We've moved him back up from C to B this patch, but he's definitely one to watch out for. Fiora remains one of the best top laners in the game for another patch running, able to destroy all sorts of lanes, whether it's squishy fighter dueling showdowns or just melting tanks with her passive. Her stats are crazy impressive, her itemization is strong, and with those Duskblade nerfs hitting some cheesy difficult lanes too, she's not exactly going to get any worse. Fiora is much easier to learn than you may first think, despite having a very high ceiling, so pick her up if you haven't already. Moving into the jungle now, and in the god tier we have Kha'Zix and Kayn. In the S tier we have Ekko, Evelynn, Fiddlesticks, Ivern, Jarvan and Kindred. Rek'Sai has been nerfed yet again, and we've moved her down to the A tier, with the hope that this time the nerfs will actually make enough difference. Blue Kayn has been very scary recently, boasting an insane success rate across most ranks. His mobility and damage is absolutely absurd, and once he gets a bit too fed, there's very little counterplay. Well, despite the nerfs to Duskblade this patch, they've also buffed other assassin items like Prowlers and Axiom Arc, and Kayle loves building these items too. Blue Kayn can be one of the scariest snowballing junglers in the game, so it might be worth using your ban for him this week. If you want to find out more about how to counter Kayn, then click the link in the description to head to our champion page, where you can see all the best champions to pick against him, along with advice and tips of how to beat him more consistently. The Ekko Buffs are also pretty interesting this patch, and we actually predict he's going to bounce back seriously hard here. He's not exactly been bad recently, but maybe a little bit unreliable. But the buffs to his Q damage and slow plus the increased shield sound like incredibly good changes. These will make his early ganks more reliable, but also improve his survivability and jungle clear too. So expect to see a lot more of him and consider giving him another go. There really is a lot of choice in the jungle now, with plenty of super strong options across the board. With the obvious suspects in the S tier, but also great A tier picks too, like Bel'Veth, Graves, Nidalee, and even slightly underrated champions too, like Lilia and Nocturne. So maybe this patch it's time to redefine your champion pool as you prepare for another big solo queue grind. Well, let's move into the mid lane now, and in the S tier we have Cassiopeia, Fizz, Naafiri, Neeko, Pantheon, Swain, Talon, Vladimir and Zed. We're going to keep Naafiri in the S tier for the mid lane. Now Qiyana is a terrifying champion in the right hands, and right now she's in a fantastic spot. In this tier list covering the majority of ranks, we've got her in the A tier, but if you can play her well enough at higher ranks, she's definitely up there with some of the best mid lane champions you can play. Qiyana has a ton of damage, great survivability, amazing engage with her ultimate, and that stealthy brush element Q allows her to constantly dive in and out of fights as it suits her. If you do know what you're doing and you get the right matchup, Qiyana is pretty damn OP. Sylas has received a huge buff to his base mana here, which is undoubtedly going to see him rise that little bit further. He's been a good counterpick to plenty of meta champions, but this buff could help him see some more consistent action. We all know just how strong he can be in those early skirmishes and fights, and if he does get too far ahead, his healing, damage, mobility and versatility with that ultimate allows him to really shine through and carry in a ton of games. So Sylas mains, you can be pretty happy with this patch. Akali is one of those champs you may not see too often. She's pretty difficult to play and has an outrageous skill ceiling, but generally speaking she's not really had the best season. Riot have buffed her Q damage and lowered its energy cost this patch, so let's see if this is enough to make the difference. We are going to keep her in the B tier for now, but let's see how these changes pan out. Tristana has been an aggressive counter pick into lots of different mid lane matchups, being played a ton in the mid lane compared to the bot lane, especially so at higher ranks. This patch she's got a few nerfs to her stats in her HP, MR, armor and armor per level, and this has made her fall down to the B tier. Now we're going to keep an eye on her, but it could be enough to remove her from the mid lane altogether, just depending on how hard this does hit her in the early game. Let's have a look at those AD carries next then, and in the S tier we have Ashe, Ezreal, Kai'Sa and Karthus. There is definitely more of a divide here than other roles, as these 4 picks are just that much stronger than those in the tier down. However, some A tier options like Twitch, Draven and even Misfortune can all be fantastic in the right games or in the right hands. Caitlyn's been buffed again for a second patch running, and these changes may seem a little bit crazy. She has been underwhelming all season with an unimpressive win rate, but there are still some Caitlyn players having great results. There's been a bunch of random builds popping up here and there, and I think this also affects her win rate too. This patch Riot have buffed her headshot passive significantly, reducing the headshot stacks needed from 6 to 5, allowing her to bully lanes more consistently. And if she does have control of those brushes in lane, she's gonna seriously hurt. We've got Caitlyn in the A tier with these changes, but let's see just how she fares over the next week. Lucian has struggled for most of this season and he's been non-existent in Split 2 so far. This patch he's got a decent damage buff to his passive, and his passive has kind of defined his strength over the years. When his passive is strong, he can be insanely oppressive, but when it's weak, he's just not really viable. We're super excited for this one, and we've moved him up to the A tier this week, so check back next week to see if he does keep his place. Vayne has been kind of flying under the radar a little bit recently, and her win rate is actually pretty impressive and surprising. Now she's not really been too popular this season, but with her itemization options now with Shiv or Kraken into Triforce or Rageblade, she has loads of item versatility depending on the enemy draft. We've moved Vayne up to the A tier in the bot lane and the top lane this week, so if you haven't played her for a while and you're missing that Vayne sweet spot that you've been craving, here's a reminder to pick her up again. Finally, let's have a look at those supports then, and in the S tier we have Qiyana, Maokai, Nautilus, Rel, Soraka, Thresh, Xerath and Zyra. And in the God tier we just have Rakan. Pyke and Senna will definitely be enjoying those Umbral Glaives buffs this week. So recently Milio did get a little bit over nerfed, and this patch he's had his Q's damage increased and his E's shield increased too. He's one of those supports who can be super impactful for very little effort. So when he was strong, he was absolutely everywhere. Now, although we don't think these changes will make him broken, they'll almost certainly help him out. A lot of the strength in Milio though was his passive before, adding so much damage to the lane, but Riot did nerf it pretty hard. Let's see if the damage on his Q can now be enough to make him a bit more viable. He will always have his insane utility though, so there'll always be a place for him in the right games either way. Lulu hasn't been having the best few weeks really, so this patch Riot have buffed her HP per level and her Q and E AP ratios. Now these buffs are only really going to help out once you got some AP under your belt, and depending on your itemization, you probably won't be building too much of it. Therefore, we aren't going to move Lulu up from the B tier for now, but if you do manage to get a cheeky slapped up Magi Soul Stealer, you'll probably feel the difference. Karma is another struggling support who's received some buffs to the AP ratio on her Q. Plus the empowered Mantra version has had its explosion ratio increase too. Now let's be honest, Karma has been incredibly underwhelming for quite some time, and she's actually had more success in other roles more so than the supports. These buffs plus the lower cooldown on her ultimate should make a difference this patch, but it aren't going to be enough to move her up a tier. If you do enjoy Karma and you can build a bit of AP early on, you probably will see a bit of an increase in damage though. Brand has always had games where he pops off and other games where he simply just runs it down. And this isn't probably going to change too much with the buffs this patch. That's not to say that the buffs aren't impressive though. They've increased his passive mana regen and his Q's and E's AP ratios too. Brand is one of those supports you never really worry about, but then you go against a good one and you're constantly being poked and bullied to the point where he just ends up 1v1ing you without too much effort. The higher rank you go though, Brand does tend to fall off a bit because he's just extremely punishable. But if you are a Brand one trick, this could be a great patch for you guys, as if you enjoy those damage supports and you get ahead on this guy, easy wins. And that's going to bring us to the end of our patch 13/16 tier list video. We hope you all enjoyed it, and don't forget to check out Mobalytics before you go. Thanks for watching, and as always guys, take care.